Subcommittee will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to explore whether there are risk factors or pre-incident indicators of terrorist activity identified by intelligence and law enforcement organizations to enable them in thwarting attacks while preserving, let me repeat that, preserving individuals' right to privacy and civil liberties. Today's hearing is entitled Violent Extremism: How Are People Moved from Constitutionally Protected Thought to Acts of Terrorism? Ahmed Abdullah Mini was a member of the West Potomac High School wrestling team. His coach described him as, quote, one of the last people, unquote, he would expect to turn to terrorism. Rami Zamzam, a 22-year-old Howard University dental student, was, quote, tolerant and engaging, unquote. These two men, along with 3 workout buddies from the local Gold's Gym in Fairfax County, were recently arrested in Pakistan, allegedly attempting to engage in jihad against U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. Their disappearance didn't raise suspicion until one of the boys' families found a farewell video soon after, and their loved ones frantically contacted the FBI for help in locating them. And to almost all who knew him, Najibullah Zazi was just the friendly hot dog stand vendor who liked to joke with his customers, not, as it is alleged, an al-Qaeda operative plotting an attack on the New York City transit system. People didn't know what to make of Major Nidal Hassan, but surely no one anticipated that he would carry out the worst domestic terrorist attack since 9/11. In each of these cases, appearances prove far different from reality. Today, this subcommittee seeks to gain understanding of how people who seem like anyone else, those who are capable of interacting socially with friends and colleagues, and in many cases are athletes and scholars, could be recruited or self-recruited to train to be terrorists. My eyes were opened 4 years ago when a terrorist cell in my district, Torrance, California, was thwarted by attentive law enforcement. Excellent police work enabled authorities to connect the dots between a series of gas station robberies and plots to attack local synagogues, recruiting offices, and a military base. The folks who were planning to do that are now in jail. This isn't new subject matter for our subcommittee either. Since early 2007, we have held a series of careful hearings to understand how someone with radical views, which are protected by our Constitution, let me say that again, radical views which are protected by our Constitution, becomes willing to engage in violent behavior, and in some cases to seek to inflict maximum harm on the maximum number of innocent civilians. Our earlier efforts have been criticized and, in my view, misunderstood by some civil liberties groups. We drafted a bill creating a commission to examine and report on what causes an individual like Major Hassan to attack. It passed the House by 404 to 6 in October 2007. Only then did the ACLU, a witness at today's hearings, which had participated in our meetings, object to it. And many disagreed that such a commission should examine terrorist recruitment on the Internet. And yet press reports suggest that at least one of the 5 Alexandria men just arrested in Pakistan posted online comments praising YouTube videos of attacks on a U.S. Army convoy hit by a roadside bomb in Kabul. That is when the alleged recruiter contacted him. YouTube videos may have inspired them to travel to Pakistan. It also appears, as I said, that the Taliban recruiter used coded messages in Facebook to communicate with them. In his written statement, Mr. McLeod Ball of the ACLU, who has been very helpful to this subcommittee, suggests that, quote, protecting our First Amendment freedoms will both honor our values and keep us safe, unquote. Of course we must protect these freedoms, but we also must prevent recruiters from cherry-picking kids from our communities and sending them to become jihadists overseas. I hope our witnesses can help us to separate the intellectual process of committing to a political agenda, protected by the First Amendment, from the operational process of moving from nonviolence to violence, which I'm sure everyone on this hearing panel agrees is not protected. We need to be able to intervene at the right point to stop individuals in our schools, neighborhoods, religious centers, and jails who are persuaded by extreme violent messaging, whether through the Internet, friends, or mentors, to commit violent acts before it is too late. So what are the triggers? The number of Americans who are either being recruited or are self-recruiting to carry out terrorist attacks here or abroad is growing. So what are the triggers? Recently, numbers of young Somali Americans were recruited in Minneapolis to join the al-Shabaab terror network in Somalia. Their families were stunned. 2 have carried out suicide bombings. So what are the triggers? And then there's David Headley, the American citizen who has now been indicted for his alleged roles in the Mumbai attacks last year, as well as for plotting an attack on a Danish newspaper. This case is doubly important to examine because he was an American recruited to attack abroad. So what are the triggers? In these cases, terrorist organizations not only successfully recruited Americans, but then provided the requisite training to enable those Americans to carry out attacks. We don't have too many more chances to get this right. There is a growing list of people suspected of being recruited and ready to carry out terror attacks in our country and abroad. If we fail to find the right way to protect both security and liberty, the next attack, I fear, could lead to a shredding of our Constitution, something none of us wants. I want to welcome all the witnesses. In addition to Michael McLeod-Ball, we will hear from Dr. Stephen Wine of the University of Chicago, my friend Jim Zogby of the Arab American Institute, and Kim Cragen of RAND. All of the members of this subcommittee who took oaths to protect and defend the Constitution and to provide for the common defense look forward to your expert analysis and suggestions for tackling this growing threat. Terrorists only have to be right once. We have to try our best to be right 100% of the time. I now yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.